Hello, critical thinkers. I am Fred Feliciano, CEO of Critical Conversations HR. Today's video is a very serious one. Today, we will be discussing protecting the vulnerable in nonprofit organizations. Those people who are vulnerable, those individuals who are vulnerable, are your clients. Some nonprofit organizations will call them community members, some will call them consumers, regardless of what you call them. They're a client that needs protection. This video, I will be going over some warning signs of staff. My goal is to help keep your organization in compliance and free from litigation. Stay tuned. I have been employed in the world of human resources and nonprofit management for a very long time. I've seen a lot. In part of my role, I've always felt a strong sense of obligation to protect my staff members and also protect the clients that come through those nonprofit organizations. I'm currently reading a book called The Man Code by Mark Henry. In part 6, the Man Code says, real men have an obligation to protect others. I've taken that to heart throughout my entire career. As a human resources professional, I've always felt an obligation to protect my employees as much as humanly possible. Ultimately, the role of HR is to really protect the organization and to keep them in compliance and to keep them litigation free. In that role, you also have an obligation to protect employees, and in some cases, you have to protect them from the very same managers you're also employed to try to protect as well. The first line of defense for most nonprofits to try to keep your organization litigation free and protecting your clients is having policies and training that directly speak on boundaries with your clients. First and foremost, if you're working, for example, in a substance abuse facility, you may be accredited by a licensing body. They will mandate you to have policies that you must train your staff in, policies on the use of administering medication, and policies on boundaries as well. Those policies have to be communicated to your staff members. In those policies, you will see something that speaks on inappropriate relationships with clients. Unfortunately, you have many individuals who are sick, who gravitate to working in organizations where they have access to those who are vulnerable. For example, those organizations that work with children, you have to have an even higher level of scrutiny when you're hiring staff, because these organizations attract people who want to do bad. I'm trying to be very careful in terms of the language on YouTube. YouTube does not appreciate certain phrases and certain words, but you have individuals who are adults who seek after children for their sick and twisted needs. So policy and training is very, very important, and in most cases will be an obligation, will be a requirement, will be a licensing requirement. So be sure that you have the policies in place that address appropriate relationships with clients from staff. In addition, those policies have to have a reporting procedure. There has to be verbiage in there for when a staff member can complain about another staff member when they see a violation of those boundaries or they see something inappropriate happening. Also, if you work at a nonprofit, if you're a nonprofit manager and you work with children, your staff members have an obligation to report. This means that they may contact an authority outside of your organization first. So your staff members have an obligation to report, meaning that they may reach out to a licensing body, or they'll reach out to a child protection agency outside of your organization, and they have to report it. They're mandated reporters. If you're a mandated reporter, you work with children, you must take this very seriously. Nonprofits, you have an obligation to investigate. Not only are you responsible for having a policy and training your staff on that policy, you also have an obligation to investigate any complaints of abuse coming from your clients. Your licensing regulatory agency will mandate you to report that complaint directly to them. Read your licensing requirements, See what stipulations are in there to make sure that you're in compliance. If you have a client that complains about abuse, whether it be a child, whether it be an adult, all complaints must be taken seriously. You must have someone in your organization who can handle these complaints, who can investigate complaints, and who will work with other people in the organization who can give them access to the person complaining. Most staff members who are abusers, who abuse children, who abuse other adults, who take advantage of others sexually, don't typically jump from 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. Oftentimes, it's a slow simmer. When I say a slow simmer, this means that boundaries are crossed, and they might be small boundaries that eventually lead up to something bigger. For example, I recall many, many, many years ago, I investigated a substance abuse counselor who made a client perform a sexual act on him. And this just didn't happen overnight. You had the substance abuse counselor who took an interest in this woman. He started, buying her small things, getting her a cup of coffee here and there. He also gave her his card that had his cell phone number on there. So that was a small violation. Well, that's actually a big violation of policy, giving a client your personal cell phone number so they can reach out to you outside of work. Oftentimes, you just don't see a blatant act happen overnight. You see a slow simmer. You see small boundaries get crossed until a major act is done, such as a physical sexual act being done. Some boundaries that are typically crossed that will be a good warning sign that you have a staff member that could be potentially abusing your clients is social media. In this day and age, people are using social media for friendships, for business purposes. And what you'll see sometimes are staff members who are hanging out or fraternizing with clients outside of the office or fraternizing with the client's family members. So there's nothing illegal about looking at someone's social media. Most human resource professionals, most nonprofit managers, whether it be executive directors, CEOs, CFOs, before they're hiring, they're looking for a social media footprint. They're looking to see what this person has done, what they're doing. Are there any red flags? Like, for example, I recall many, many, many years ago looking through someone's social media and seeing that the person is engaging in substance abuse, boasting about it, uh, and doing certain things that I'm not going to say because again, YouTube is very finicky about certain words. So looking at social media might be an indicator of inappropriate boundaries. And if you see, for example, Instagram, you see one of your staff members hanging out with one of your clients outside of work, you have to be very cautious about that. And hopefully your policy speaks about social media, taking pictures of clients. That should be in there. Another red flag is when you have staff members hanging out with clients outside of work. That should not be occurring, especially if they're children. Children have to be protected. And oftentimes, the family members in their life are not protecting children. So, as staff members of nonprofit organizations, again, part of it, it's the man code. We have an obligation to protect. We have an obligation to protect those people who are vulnerable. And it's not just specifically men per se, although I do believe that men have a bigger obligation to protect those around them. If whether you're a female working in a nonprofit organization, most nonprofit leadership are women. That's the reality. Most nonprofit executive directors are women, or CEOs are women. Protect your staff, protect your clients, take these things seriously. One thing I've seen with children are staff members befriending single moms. That's probably one of the biggest red flags of potential abuse when you see a staff member befriending a single mom. In most cases, it's a male staff member befriending the single mom, and that's done to gain access to the child outside of work. Another red flag: gifts. Your policy, your training should be very clear about not providing gifts to your clients, to your community members. In some cases, for example, during the time of this filming, it's Christmas time. Most organizations will have a targeted toy drive, a targeted gift drive, where you have gifts from the organization going to your clients. Your staff members individually should not be giving gifts to your clients. That should be in your policy. And if that's done, that's typically a red flag. It's something that we call grooming in the world of abuse. Another red flag that you might have a staff member abusing children or targeting adults is something that I call targeted attention. If you have a case manager per se that has a caseload of 20 individuals and you notice that that particular staff member is paying more attention, is magnifying one client, there might be some potential abuse there. When you have a staff member giving preferential treatment to a client, that also has to be looked at and it has to be evaluated as part of the employee's role. It has to be examined. If you've watched this video all the way to the end, I want to thank you. I commend you for taking this topic seriously. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Please like the video. Take care, and don't forget, protect the vulnerable. Peace.